Hello and welcome to my podcast. It's Mariana Making Sense. You decide. So today we are having an interview with C.J Grace, the author of Adulterer's Wife, How to Thrive Whether You Stay or Not. She uses infidelity and cancer for positive change, and I feel like this conversation is just amazing. We touch on so many points that I believe as a society we should talk about more, and I hope you enjoy it. And just so you know, this episode it's divided in two, so we're going to have the first part today, and if you want to keep listening to this amazing conversation, the next bonus episode will be dropping on Friday. So thank you. Hello, CJ, and welcome to my podcast. Is Mariana Making Sense? Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm great, and thank you so much for inviting me to be on your show.
So I wanted to talk to you about, I talked to you briefly a few weeks ago, and I think you're an amazing woman and like so funny. You get to inspire others. And again, as I told you, I listened to a few of your interviews and I'm like, she's talking the unspeakable things, right? I feel like you go on that borderline where we need to tell the truth to the world because this society is tough nowadays. And I feel like life has taught you a lot about how to grab, let's say, life by the horns. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. Yes. There's nothing like a little bit of adversity to get you to find out ways to enjoy your life more, let's say.
And what would you say? Tell us a little about you, who you are, what have you done. She is a great author, people. So, but wait, let me give it to CJ.
Well, in a way, I'd been living a charmed life. I had a dream job as a journalist with the BBC. I was meeting celebrities, politicians, people who were making their mark on the world. And I really felt like I had my finger on the pulse of current events. And then I got a transfer to work for China Radio International in Beijing. And it was there that I had a fairy tale falling in love with an American guy. And, fast forward to our 25th wedding anniversary. We spent it in Hawaii. It was the best one ever. And I really thought that our relationship was as solid as a rock. But little did I know that just 2 years or so later, my whole world would come crumbling down. My husband was openly carrying on an affair with a woman half his age. And then I found out that I had breast cancer for the second time. And I actually have one of those BRCA genes that Angelina Jolie has thought to be a potential death sentence. So it was really a very, very difficult time for me. I had the ground kicked away from underneath my feet, and I'd entered this sort of brave and terrifying new world. So that's really my story in a nutshell.
And how old, if I may ask, were you when all of this happened?
Well, how old was I? I was in my mid-50s, I think, or early mid-50s when I found out about the infidelity. And then a couple years after that, just less than 2 years, I think it was around a year after I found out about the infidelity, I came down with the second diagnosis of breast cancer. So I was, in midlife and thinking that everything was settled and, the rest of my life would go on an even keel the way it had been before. Not the case. No.
I know, but I feel like, of course, nobody wants that happened to anyone, right? Or to ourselves or to people that we know. But I know one of the things that I mentioned to you that I love is that you say that you're grateful that your husband has had a mistress. And I feel like, I'm going to ask you why, but I feel like if you had such a wonderful life, right? Like where you had everything that you just described, like meeting with the artists and people, like you had everything at the palm of your hands, and you were you're from UK, you were in Beijing, like live this love storyline, and then life shook you, like as I call it. So I'm an immigrant here in Canada, and I feel like Canada grabbed me with a bat filled with nails and it hit me multiple times. I feel like if that's what your life was and you were like at the peak for so long and then you go through this, but again, your perspective on it is that you're grateful. I feel like it's a good like midlife kind of like, okay, you get to have a new one. Take it to the new life.
That's right. And sometimes when you're in a long-term relationship, you don't realize the things that aren't right with it. And I only realized some of those issues when I was actually out of the relationship. And the fact is that I am so much happier now on my own and without my husband. So that's exactly why I'm grateful to the mistress that he had, because in effect, he's taken him off she has taken him off my hands, in effect, and left me free to live the life I want to live. I'm no longer having to minister to him, or, the business we shared together. My children are grown. It's like I'm a free woman, finally,
Exactly. It's crazy because I mean, if I do the math right, you were married in your 20s, right?
Yeah, I was married in my 20s or mid 20s or so, and we lived together in Beijing for a while. He was also studying there while I was working for China Radio International. And at that time, we thought, well, if we can put up with each other in a difficult environment like Beijing, we can put up with each other anywhere.
Yeah.
But that proved not to be the case. So I'm glad that I had the life that I had with him. I don't regret it, because when you think about it, regret is not about the past. It's about the present. And if you're happy with your present as it is right now, you don't regret what's happened to bring you to that point. So I don't regret the relationship. I think we both got a lot out of it. I have two wonderful grown sons. And so, it was a good thing. Obviously, he had some shortcomings as a husband, but, so be it. We're all flawed human beings. Yeah. And, in the book that I write, that I've already published, Adulterer's Wife, How to Thrive Whether You Stay or Not, the mantra is that the best revenge is to get past the need for it. If you get stuck in revenge and vengeance strategies after infidelity, all it does is keep you churning in that negativity. Yeah. My aim was to use it as a catalyst to move forward, so that I learned how to become more complete, creative, and joyful as a human being in my own right, with or without a partner. And that was very important to me. And that was a very important lesson to learn.
Totally. And I feel like you also got out, I guess, very quickly of that victim stage, right? That's right. Many people love to be. It's like their favorite spot. And I've heard from people that it's so easy to fall into the victim state, right? Into the I'm a victim. Like it gets so comfortable with time that it's so hard to get out of there. And I feel like that's such a danger zone.
That's true, because it seems to be one of the problems today that everybody is framing themselves as a victim, and therefore they need assistance in some way, because they are a victim. And so it does absolutely prevent you from moving on. Absolutely, because you want to be a victor and not a victim. You want to be the victor of your circumstances. And however crappy your circumstances are, there are always thousands upon thousands, millions of people in far worse circumstances who manage to make it through. So in many ways, I feel very grateful for a lot of things, to be in a relatively free country, to not be in a war zone, to be in a place where women have freedom, which is not the case in so many countries in the world. I mean, in terms of infidelity, there are many third world countries where infidelity is absolutely fine if the man is doing it, and the woman is just supposed to put up with it and keep the home fires burning and raise the children. And if a woman has an affair or commits adultery, she can get stoned to death. Yeah. So I'm very, very grateful for so many things, and it's really necessary to not see yourself as a victim, because then you can never move forward. The best thing to do is to use it as a catalyst, any kind of adversity. And we all have adversity. It doesn't necessarily have to be infidelity. Having gone through both breast cancer and infidelity, ill health is a hell of a kick in the pants to decide to sort of, if not now, when, you have to live your life now, because you just don't know how long you have on this earth. And the fact is you can go out and get run over by a truck tomorrow. So you should be living the life you want to live right
exactly.
now.
And I feel what?
Right now and not tomorrow, because tomorrow is always put off.
Yeah, it's like another thing that I loved of what you say. It's that life is short, go for what you want now. And I feel like I've been like that since I was little. And it's funny I'm touching on certain things that you just said. I remember being little and I was telling my mom, I don't know, Mom, I want a tattoo. And she was like, the thing that they tell you all the time, it's, well, what about when you're 70 and your face or like your skin, it's all wrinkled and now you have that tattoo? I'm like, why? Like, why would I worry about something that it's going to happen to me in 60 years? What if I die? What if I die before that? Like, I need to enjoy my tattoo now. And it's funny how sometimes we think so far ahead and don't get to live the present day.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, well, going back to the victim part, I feel like I have a few friends that have gone through either being cheated on or certain hiccups in their life, and they just get stuck into a spiral of victimism, right? And you talk to them years after and they're like, no, but he did that and he's now doing that. It's like, that person, it's out of your world. Like, why do you keep punishing yourself? And it's like you say about revenge. Revenge is more, I think it may sound fun when you're like, oh, I want to take revenge on this person and like mash his car or whatever, but I feel like it says so much about the person who is making that revenge happen than the other one. And yes, as you say, the best is to get past the need of it. But talking on that point, how do you think you reach that point? Because I think it's easier for me to say it when I haven't suffered it. So when did you notice or realize that revenge was not worth it for you, for example?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's absolutely much easier said than done. And I definitely went through some dark periods when I first found out. There's no question, everybody is going to go through that. But, I actually, without planning to do it, I developed a sort of 6-part program of things that I did to help me bring me back into a more positive state, and I found those 6 things that I did useful for both coping with infidelity and for coping with the breast cancer. And I think they're useful for any form of adversity. And what I wanted to do was to get off that emotional roller coaster of negative feelings.
Yeah.
And so I can go into detail, if you'd like, of the 6-part program. And I think it's useful for everybody to hear it.
Yes,
the first thing
I was going to say, I do want to hear about it. And also I want you to tell me if you've heard like success stories about people that have followed this program, that have reached out back to you and made like, this helped me tremendously, and tell you their story.
There is one story I can tell you. And one of the points here is about loving your body and becoming more beautiful. And by that, I'm certainly not saying I became a supermodel. That's never going to happen. It's more about internal beauty. Things like getting enough sleep and getting exercise and eating properly. That horrible stereotype of the woman who's depressed after having been dumped by her boyfriend. She's lying in bed, watching television, eating ice cream from a tub. That's probably the worst thing you can do to improve your mood. One of the things I found that was really helpful was outdoor exercise, especially if it was with friends. And in terms of a success story, there was someone that I knew who had such a bout of sadness that she could barely get out of bed in the morning. And I said to her, listen, if you can do just one thing, make time first thing in the morning, spend 15 minutes walking in your local park out in nature. Make sure you do it. And just from that one change, she found her mood dramatically improved. outdoor exercise. There's always going to be a little bit of nature somewhere near you where you can go for a walk. And that really is very important. Sitting at home brooding, watching television, eating ice cream is not going to help. But those kinds of things. So that was a big success story for her. The other things that I did, one of the first ones was to find confidants and mentors who had my best interests at heart, people that I could vent my deepest, darkest feelings to, who wouldn't be turned off by it, and people who would keep my story confidential. I found one particular guy didn't work because he broadcast my soap opera to all his friends on his email. So that was not a good choice of confidant. So you do want people who are going to keep your story confidential. The second thing was that I cultivated connections old and new, because what I found was that almost all the people I mixed with were connected to my husband, friends of his, or people who were connected to the business we ran together. Now, those are not the sort of people you can talk about marital difficulties with. That's very unprofessional if you do it with people you work with. So I needed to rebuild my community. And I had let it slide so much that there was a really good friend of mine from back in England. She was convinced that I'd done something to offend her because I ignored her emails. I was so busy ministering to my husband, the business, the kids, the house, all that stuff. I ignored her emails. And I thought, never again. I'm going to reclaim my friends. I'm going to make new friends and build a community. That's really, really important. Whether you choose to stay or go, that's really important. And then the third thing, which is very much part of my background, having grown up in a culture of Monty Python, is laughter therapy. I wanted to...
Wait, what is Monty Python?
Monty Python's Flying Circus, which is I consider it to be the best comedy show ever. Came out of Britain in the 1970s. And my parents used to let us stay up late to watch it on television when it first came out. And that's it. They have a lot of absurd British humor. And that's really something that is part of my psyche, I suppose. I see absurd humor in most of the tragedies of life, basically, especially the stuff that befalls me. And laughter therapy is very, very important. You want to hang out with people that bring you up rather than bring you down. And I stopped watching depressing dramas. Somebody wanted me to go and see Wild with Reese Witherspoon, for example, which is all about how she's getting over depression. No. I watched comedies only. And I stopped watching the news. Even as a former BBC journalist, I used to watch a lot of news, but I found that the news was also bringing me down because it's all bad news. They're not reporting good news because that's not particularly exciting to listen to. So that was a very, very important thing, because your mood is affected by how much laughter you have. There's even an Indian practice called laughter yoga, where people actually laugh for a particular period of time and do laughter practices. But I prefer organic, natural laughter from mixing with friends and watching comedies. That's my thing, definitely. I've already covered the next point, love your body and become beautiful. But the fifth point is to find your passion and become more of a hedonist, because especially women, we tend to just keep our nose to the grindstone, ministering to our husbands and their needs. And maybe you've got work or a joint business and you're looking after the children, and you make absolutely no time for yourself. And that's critical. And passion can be, volunteering for a cause you believe in. It can be art, it can be music, it can be, for me, writing a book, because I always enjoyed writing. It doesn't mean you give up your day job and try and make a living as a saxophone player, because you always like doing that. But, you still want to make time to build what you enjoy, because you have to nurture what makes your heart sing. And if you don't do that, you start to feel down and depressed. And that's really important. And finding
we forget that.
Yeah. And if you find your passion, it is also a way that you meet like-minded people. So you make new friends who are interested in the same things that you're interested in. And then the very final thing that I did, which is the hardest to do, and you touched on it earlier, is that the past is gone and the future doesn't exist. Now, what's right in front of you is all there is. And so many of us spend our time regretting what we've done in the past, wishing we'd done things differently, and worrying about the future and how it's going to turn out. And it's kind of a total waste of time. It's, not what you want to do. You want to try and live in the present and become more mindful, fully engaged in what you're doing right now. And that was, as I said, it was challenging, but it's an important thing to do. And you don't have to have adversity that you've gone through. You don't have to have an unfaithful husband, or you don't have to have breast cancer to find that you're really not living in the present. For so many of us are sort of churning about other things and not really noticing the beautiful scenery, the wonderful friends, the wonderful conversations that are going on right in front of us. And that means that you're not really living, you're just existing. So there's no doubt that the more mindful you are, the more contented you become.
And how do you think people get to be more mindful?
I think you have to make the decision to do that, and catch yourself as you are thinking these sort of negative thoughts that it's not that you want to feel bad and beat yourself up about having negative thoughts. That's not what I'm saying. But if you catch yourself with thoughts that just aren't helping you, and you realize that you're not focusing on what you're doing right now, then you can work at becoming more mindful. Actually, on my website, if you go to cjauthor.com, I have an exercise that I did on how to use a piece of chocolate to learn how to become more mindful. I'm a real chocoholic, so it was something that resonated with me. And so you'll find on that website page how to do the exercise. And also I have a free PDF called Overcoming Infidelity, Tools to Tame the Roller Coaster of Negative Emotions, which also includes that chocolate exercise. And the reason why it's so effective is you use all 5 senses and you learn how to become more mindful, rather than you're picking this thing up and stopping it in your nose, not in your nose, sorry, in your mouth, and you're doing something else, but you're not really, you're not really tasting it. No, don't stick it up your nose, not a good idea. But it's so easy to sort of, you're eating it and you're not really, okay, you like chocolate, but you're not really enjoying it, and this is a way to, wow, you're doing something you enjoy. Take some time to savor it.
I know. It's
and
so
we
important.
don't do that. We don't do that. It's a shame. And we're out in nature and you're just head down thinking about, oh, I got to get my tax preparation done because the deadline's come out. No, enjoy the beautiful scenery. You're not going to be able to do your tax preparation when you're walking in the woods anyway.
Totally.
So those are the kinds of things we need to, all of us will benefit by becoming more mindful and enjoying the present as it is right now. There's no question.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like that's the reason of my podcast, right? Kind of like we need to be more aware of how we can be more mindful and how we can live in the present, be better people, because it's so easy to get lost in work and being busy and just attending things that you have to do with your friends, that you look back to your years back, and the years that have passed, and you realize that you haven't truly enjoyed so many things, and now it's too late maybe to enjoy certain things that they're already gone.
Right. And there's so many distractions, and it's very easy to get bogged down in, for example, social media, ministering to your Twitter, your Facebook, worrying about what people say about you and how you appear to others and all of this kind of stuff. It's sort of irrelevant. You want to be enjoying your life as it is right now in the real world, not in the world of the small screen. And that's what's going to make you happy. I don't think having thousands of Facebook friends is going to make anybody happy in the way as having just a couple of really good flesh and blood friends will.
Yeah. No, totally. And I feel like that's why I liked the pandemic so much, for example. And my mom hates that I say that I love the pandemic. That for me was great. And it's because I'm like the typical person that has too many friends. I'm running everywhere. And I would go to work, and then I had like a birthday, then I had a dinner, then I had to go to the movies, like so many things, that when the pandemic hit, it was like, now I have time for me. and I've grown so much as a person. And it's amazing. I'm like so glad that life, I mean, I'm not glad for the pandemic itself, but that life and the world gave me like a hard stop and being like, Mariana, you got to focus on yourself as well, you know, like you come first. And it's funny because that's something that I always knew, but I never applied. And now, again, it's so easy to go back into like the routine that I had before, that I have to be mindful and be and acknowledge those moments when I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm getting myself lost, and then kind of like go back to where I am now. But I think it's so important to to recognize and to identify those moments when you're like getting lost and put yourself back on track, on the track that you want. That it's great, but it's so hard. And at the same time, it's so easy, right? Because it's right there. It's that we know it, we have it in us. It's just that, again, we're busy, like you said, going around in nature, and we have our head in so many problems that we don't really get to enjoy nature. And I think it was like, I've been in Canada almost 7 years, and I hated being here for so long. And I think it was at the mark of 4 years that, for whatever reason, I was trying to go to the gym. It was closed. I couldn't. I was like, okay, but I want to work out. What do I do? And I went outside. I hated it. I ran outside like 3 kilometers. I hated it. And the next day I went to the gym again, and they were like, no, it's still in repairs, like the gym from the condo. I was like, okay, fine, I'll go outside. And I went outside and I loved it, CJ. I started like looking at the trees, at the lake. I live downtown Toronto, so I have the lake right here. And it was such a game changer. And in one of those runs, I don't know if it was the 4th, 5th, I don't know when, but I finally said the words, "Thank you, Canada." And it was while I was on one of those runs. And I was like, I can't believe that it took me this long and to run out in the nature and absorb the air, the peacefulness of the lake, the universe, everything, to be like, I am actually thankful for being here. 4 years later, it's crazy.
But it probably takes about that long to even feel like you're a member of the community, rather than a foreign person invading sort of thing, you know. And building community is so important. And if you have a strong circle of friends, that makes you feel at home in any place, I think. So that's what I would say. But you're so right that it's very easy to get caught up in all kinds of distractions and all kinds of busy work. And obviously there are things you have to do. You can't let things slide so that bills don't get paid and you haven't got a job that pays them for you. But you've got to have a personal life outside that makes you happy, that makes you feel connected to this world, the universe, and all of that kind of stuff. And your story about being in some ways grateful to the pandemic is a common story for a lot of people. It did allow us to slow down. It allowed us to make new connections, because the whole idea of meeting people on Zoom, Clubhouse, all kinds of things like that came into being. And you can build community that way when it's real-time communication, real-time audio, real-time video. What I've always found deadening, though, is the kind of communication that people have through some of the older social media platforms like Facebook, like Twitter, that those things can be as much a negative on your psyche as a positive. Yeah,
100%. I feel like I don't visit those pages that much, and I feel like it's because it doesn't add me that much value. But so I wanted to ask you another thing that it came to my mind right now. If you had to put a name on that chapter of your life when you were discovered breast cancer, then cheated on, and then again breast cancer, how would you call that chapter of your life?
I'd probably call it the Dark Ages. A bit like, medieval Europe or whatever. It was definitely a time when I was at a low point. And I think you need low points to develop high points.
Yeah.
Because if everything stays on an even keel and it's sort of more or less okay all the time, it's not much of a catalyst to make you improve your life. I found that I grew so much as a person after having gone through both the infidelity and the breast cancer. It just makes you, it speeds things up. You think, wow, how am I going to live the rest of my life? I don't want to live the rest of my life like this. How can I change it? What can I do? And that was really the catalyst.
And I was going to ask, because one of the things that I was going to say is that when I mentioned that you got married when you were 20 something, it's like the way that I see myself now, it's like right now I'm very hard on who do I choose to be with? Like, what do I want for my life? What do I look for in a partner? And I always say, if I were in my 20s and I don't know, I could have gotten married to whoever, and then you'll figure it out as you go, which is not the best scenario, but it's a scenario for so many people. So I feel like we don't know where we are exactly at that age, unless you're like a very mature person. But I feel like it's a sad reality that happens to a lot of people, that they've been married for years, and then you talk to them and they're just like souls and pains for some reason. They're just like,
well, that's true. And that also is one of the reasons why there's so much infidelity. Marriages that have gone south, gone sour, and perhaps the partners are staying together for economic reasons or to keep the home intact for the children, but they really aren't happy together. And so many marriages after, a decade or two turn celibate. I was amazed I have a chapter in my Adulterer's Wife book about celibate marriages. That's another dirty little secret that people don't tell you about. And if you ain't getting fed at home, you're going to go for a takeout.
Totally.
So that was often a reason I found why infidelity happened. And it's, as I said, it's not black and white. You can't always blame the partner that's cheating, but blaming is a waste of time anyway. You really don't want to go into the blame game. You want to, if you're not happy with that person, if you haven't felt that they've treated you well, then you have to decide either to stay if things can be improved, or if you really are stuck with it for financial reasons or for the children, and then you make the best of it, or you move on and leave the relationship. So and those are difficult decisions to make, but it's necessary to do it.
Totally. And I feel like something beautiful that you mentioned, I believe, on your book is that you don't blame the mistress, right? And I feel like a lot of people, I come from a Latin culture, and you can see that guys would be so mad if the girl is kind of like looking at another guy, and they would hate the other guy. And it's like, no. Like, who has a fault here? The person that it's in the relationship. Let's not the other person. The other person might not even know what's going on.
Right.
On the other side.
Yeah. And there are plenty of cases where guys have affairs and they never tell the woman that they're seeing that they're married. That's also common. But at the very least, the mistress never entered into those marriage vows with you, but your partner did. And so who's more to blame? Well, the one that made the marriage vows, not the one that didn't. I mean, sure, there are certain times when this poor hapless man gets snapped up by this voracious woman, but that's usually not what happens. But it's easy for people because they don't want to blame their partner. They don't want to blame their husband because they still love them. So it's obviously all the fault of the mistress. They just dragged them off, kicking and screaming, to have an affair with them. Sure, no, that's not what happened.
It's like when I don't know what I saw, but it was like somebody cheated on someone. I don't know if it's from a movie or whatever. And it's like, oh, you're going to tell me that you fell down and you landed on his dick? Like, it doesn't work like that.
That's a great story. Yes.
I don't know where I heard it, but it was like, yeah, exactly. No, that just doesn't happen. And I was going to ask, what could you say has been or was the hardest thing for you about when you got like diagnosed with cancer the second time, and also, I would say, well, the first and second time, and also the hardest thing for you about the cheating from your husband?
Well, first of all, the hardest thing about the cheating from my husband was that it was a time, some people think, oh, well, it must have happened at a really bad time in your marriage. We were getting on better than ever before. And I thought that, I really thought we had a very, very strong relationship. Mm-hmm. So that really shocked me. So that was probably the hardest thing. Had we not been getting on well and fighting and not had a sex life and all of that, I might have thought that it was more reasonable in a funny kind of way, but we were getting on better than ever before. Okay. So that made it very shocking. And as far as the second diagnosis of breast cancer is concerned, I was just about getting back on an even keel after finding out about the infidelity. I had a fledgling new relationship with a wonderful guy from London, long distance relationship because I was in California at the time. And so I thought everything was fine. And after I'd had my first bout of cancer, I had changed my diet. I was exercising a lot. I took supplements and all of this. I thought I was living a very healthy lifestyle. So it was a hell of a shock that I got breast cancer the second time.
Yeah.
I thought I was so healthy. I didn't think that anything like that would happen. And actually, it was a worse case of breast cancer than I'd had the first time. I had it on the left side in 2007, and there was no lymph node involvement. I just had radiation therapy after that. But with the cancer I got in 2014, there was a micromat in one of my lymph nodes, which meant that I had to have chemotherapy. And that was a huge blow. I didn't really want to do that. I had a second opinion. They found the same result and all of that kind of stuff. So I ended up doing radiation, chemo, and a lot of alternative therapy as well. So, but that was a real shock, huge shock, because I thought I was so incredibly healthy and I was back to being happy again, just starting this brand new relationship. And now what was I going to do? He wasn't going to want to have a relationship with somebody with slashed boobs and looking like a hairless zombie, But actually, it survived our relationship. My relationship survived. So yeah, he was pretty good. But it was all long distance. When I was going through chemo and radiation, I was on my own in California, which was another reason why I wrote my second book, My Wild Ride: How to Thrive After Breast Cancer and Infidelity, because so many breast cancer memoirs / self-help books are about this wonderful support that the lady got from their partner. I know Joan London's book does that. She wrote a book about her breast cancer story, Had I Known. And in her dedication, she has 2 pages talking about how wonderful her husband was and how helpful he was. For my book, I won't be having a dedication like that. I'm afraid I did it on my own. I was my own advocate, and I managed quite fine.
Yeah, and that's admirable, right? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I bet it was hard, to have that long distance and try, wanting to have that person with you, right? Holding your hand at least once, on those chemo. I mean, that's a game changer, I guess. And again, it hits you with the bad, full of nails, but when you think you're doing everything perfect and everything by the book, and then life just comes you, woo.
With a curveball, absolutely. Yes, you get hit with a curveball, right? Yeah, just when you think everything's fine. So we always have to be prepared for the unpredictable nature of existence on this planet.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But okay, so CJ, we're gonna cut the first part of our wonderful episode, and I do want to ask you before we cut this first part, the question that I'll ask all my speakers and is all my guests. If you could change something in your life, what would it be and why?
Well, I don't think I want to change anything because I'm very happy with my life as it is now. And with that butterfly effect, if you do one tiny thing, you could be in a completely different place. And I'm very happy with my life as it is now. I think that I've been extremely fortunate and I'm very grateful for the opportunities I've had. So I can't really think of too much that I'd want to change. Maybe I could have brought my children up a bit better to not be so untidy.
That a little bit.
But I should have, when they wouldn't clean up their room, I should have taken the stuff away and thrown it out and said, well, you can have it, or taken it away for a month, so you can have it back when you have a tidy room. But nothing really major. I'm pretty happy with my life as it is now. I really can't complain.
And I love it, because I feel like that's my answer when people ask me right now, like if I could change anything or if I see myself somewhere else. And I feel like that means that you accept your past, right? And it was what you were mentioning at the beginning. You accept your past, you've healed from it, and you actually are thankful that happened, because that's why you're here. You're doing everything, all the wonderful things that you're doing. So amazing, CJ. So we're going to keep talking, people, about the little dirty of infidelity. And one thing that I have to comment about CJ's website is that I love that she has a section that it says the jealous bitch blog. And I just love it, because I feel like it's like where people trying to tell their stories. And again, sometimes people want to have an opinion. It sounds like they're bitching all the time, right? So I guess it comes from there.
Yes. And, it's part of that sort of Monty Python style humor,
yes.
And if you don't laugh, you cry, and I'd much rather laugh. So,
yes.
One of the things that I've done is I have every Christmas, I do 12 Christmas gifts for your cheating ex, and they are spoof gifts. Whenever I go to yard sales or anything like that and I see something very weird, I always take a photograph.
My God.
And so I'm not saying you have to send your ex-husband that's cheated on you a box of dead fish. I'm just saying, have a laugh. You're not necessarily going to be buying any of those things, but they're all things to make you laugh.
Yeah, no, for sure. Amazing. So people, if you want to keep hearing us talk about the stories and everything about cheating, because we got to talk about this stuff. It happens all the time. And that's my next question for CJ about being her out in the open with this subject. I'm sure you've crossed many, many people with stories similar to themselves, or people from their parents or friends. And I feel like that's something that we should talk about more. So people, if you want to keep listening to us, to this two amazing, wonderful women, head on 3 days from now to the bonus episode. Bye.